Am I the a-hole for canceling a check of $12,000 that I wrote for my infertile friend for her next IVF cycle over a joke? Original post. I, female 35, am infertile. My ex-husband and I tried everything to have kids, but it just never happened. He divorced me, went and married someone younger who was able to give him a kid, and from what I gather, they're expecting a second child together. It hurts seeing someone else have what I couldn't. I get frustrated with myself sometimes, and with family blaming me for basically everything. I turn to my friends for support, especially Ellie. She's in the same infertility boat as me, but she and her husband are currently trying IVF hoping it would work. Ellie asked me for help to pay for upcoming IVF cycle, and I agreed to write her a check of $1,200,000. I really wanted to help her, and the money came with no strings attached. I wrote the check and gave it to her last week. She was very appreciative of it. The very next day, I got a sudden message from a mutual friend, Carol, with a screenshot of the conversation she had with Ellie. Turns out she and Ellie were talking about the next IVF cycle. And Ellie said she hoped the cycle would work because she didn't want to end up being divorced and having her husband go marry someone younger and have a baby with them and another one on the way. While she's alone and without a family at 35, she's 32. I was stunned and hurt. I knew she meant me here, but I did not confront her. I simply contacted my bank and canceled the check. In the evening, Ellie called to ask why I canceled the check and I told her. She went crazy, saying she didn't mean it that way, and that she thought that this was somewhat an inside joke between desperate infertile women. She came over with her husband the next day begging I write another check, but I refused. An argument ensued, and her husband thought I wasn't being supportive of her like when she supported me throughout my struggles. She left crying and we haven't talked since then. Her husband keeps reminding me, while repeatedly calling Carol a toxic snake, of the date of the next cycle, saying they can't have it after I took the money that was supposed to pay for it back. Some friends think I'm being oversensitive. Carol is on my side telling me to tell them to go to hell, but I feel so bad about it. What I've done might just damage our 15 years of friendship. Maybe I shouldn't have canceled it, but I just felt so offended by what she said about me, and how she basically mocked my unfortunate circumstances. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the little update. Not the a-hole. It was a cruel thing to do of her, especially after you were being so gracious towards them. By the way, just a reminder, your worth is not connected to your ability to bear children. Oh, and to the people saying that worth kind is tied to children, especially as a woman, no it's not. Anyone telling you any different is just wrong. You decide what your contribution is to the world, what your legacy is. And from what I hear, Opie has the biggest, kindest giving heart while still having strong moral values. That makes her worth a lot in my book. Anyone who doesn't see that is just blinded oblivious. Yep. Also, 15 years of friendship, but only now she's showing her real face, and how she devalues Opie for not having a child and for her husband having left her. In the words of Maya Angelou, when people show you who they are, believe them. May God bless Carol. She saved Opie. Years do not mean anything when friends act like this friend and her husband, trying to guilt trip Opie. Holy smokes, not the a-hole. $12,000, no strings attached? Yeah, I would be kissing your butt. You would be my future kid's godparent. I would wake up grateful for your existence every freaking day. Bashing you to another friend behind your back? Hell freaking no. I would be out there calling your praises from the rooftops. Ellie doesn't deserve your friendship, let alone your money. Right? I'm glad Opie found in time to cancel the check. But I also know what a punch in the gut it is, to realize you've been used. It's just awful, if not worse than being successfully swindled. Glad Carol had the decency to tell Opie as well. Opie should treat herself to a nice vacation to get away from the BS. Now for the mini update. Hello again, and wow, thank you so much for all the support and compassion that you've shown me. I could feel it through my screen. I have decided I'm going to put some distance between me and Ellie. Things have been rough lately, and I think that distance is what I need right now, especially for my mental health. After reading some comments here, I now feel less heavy and more relieved. Doesn't change the fact that I'm still completely and utterly shocked by Allie's behavior. It's a shame having to come to the realization that even those who are supportive of you the most could cause much harm. Oh, and by the way, I sent Carol a link for this thread to see what her thoughts were, and she just laughed. Next story. Am I the a-hole for backing out of a friend's trip after it became a groomsman trip for a wedding I'm not in? I have had a group of 4 friends since elementary school. The 5 of us have stayed close friends through elementary, middle and high school, going to the same schools, and then through university. Separate universities, but we would visit often and stayed very close. We are all 26-year-old guys and have been friends for 19 years now. One of the guys in the group, Brandon, is getting married in January. Brandon asked the other 3 guys to be groomsmen in his wedding, alongside his 2 brothers and 2 of his friends from college. This left me the only homie in the group who wasn't a groomsman. I was upset when I first realized, but I talked to my parents about it, and they reminded me it's Brandon's wedding and not a group event. He can have who he likes up there. And just because I'm not a groomsman doesn't mean Brandon doesn't consider me a friend, and that he does already have 7 people up there beside him, which is a lot. My parents are the only one I ever told I was upset about it, and now I think I'm pretty well over it. They've had a few groom's party gatherings, like they went for drinks after they got fitted for suits, it went golfing together, and Brandon and his fiancée had a barbecue for their wedding party. That's always a weird reminder for me. Now, my friends and I usually go on a trip in December to watch a football game. We started a now tradition in our first year in university and have been going every year since. It's always just been the 5 of us friends, and we go for like 3 to 4 days. On Tuesday, my 3 friends came to me and wanted to know my opinion on inviting the other groomsmen on the trip as a surprise to Brandon. The 3 of them were clearly all for this idea and really wanted me to say yes. I told them I wasn't sure, I had to think about it, which was awkward because it was obvious they thought I was just going to say yes. I spoke to them about it today and said, honestly, I don't want to go on a trip being the only non-groomsman. I know Brandon's brothers and I've met his college friends and they're all cool, but I don't want to be the clear odd man out. I told my friends that they should do it, I just won't go this year. Which was fine for me because I could do with saving some money because I have a separate destination wedding to go in February now. The other guys won't invite the other groomsmen if it means I won't come. But it's clear they're also annoyed at them not being able to invite the groomsmen because of me. One of my friends spoke to me separately and he told me he really thinks I'm not fair or a good friend and asked if it's because I resent not being a groomsman. Feels like any decision I make besides agreeing to go on the trip with the 4 other groomsmen is going to make them mad at me. Am I the a-hole for backing out of the trip if I'm going to be the only non-groomsman? Not the a-hole. You didn't make a big deal about not being a groomsman. They are the a-holes for ruining the trip that has been a tradition for years. If they want the others to come, then you have every right to stay home. At that point, it's no longer keeping the tradition, but changing it to a wedding event. Yes, OP, just simply tell those other 3 friends that you have a pricey planned trip in February. So making this a groomsman party this year works for everyone. And leave it there. Any backlash you get, just know that it's all about them. And have fun at the destination wedding. That's right here. Brandon created this dynamic and the guys need to understand why it'll be uncomfortable for you to participate. Unless Brandon is going to explain why you weren't invited, and it's a legit reason, hard to think of one, that's not simply doesn't view you as a close friend. You absolutely should not feel like an a-hole for refusing to go on this trip. Not the a-hole. Yes. This isn't really about OP not being a groomsman. It's about there being a lot of other activities that OP has been left out of because he's not a groomsman, and him not wanting to feel like an outsider when the event is a group thing that he should be central to. The others are getting carried away with the groomsman group to OP's detriment. It's a wedding party. It doesn't have to take over all of their activities for the year. And now they want OP to go along with their idea, because if he agrees then everything's okay. And they don't have to feel guilty about recentering themselves to a group he's excluded from. And you know, if all the groomsmen come, then there will be a lot of talk about the other things they've been doing that OP was left out of. Some things that he actually could have been included in if it was just that they couldn't have one more groomsman on a day. Next story. Am I the a-hole for yelling at my husband for making my daughter feel bad? So my oldest daughter, who I'll call May, is 16. She has a job, has had it for about 5 months. Out of all the children, she's the most mature. She's also good at saving, but she rarely spends money on things she enjoys, and instead keeps it in her bank account. My husband wanted to have her start paying her phone bill immediately. It would have been $50 monthly, but I said no and eventually compromised at the beginning of October. Note that my husband, her stepfather, is very money tight and he tells her to pay everything she wants. Now, I agree with this somewhat, as she should be monetarily responsible so she's ready for college. But he wants her to pay for everything. Anytime she asks for something, he'll respond with, "You have money, buy it yourself." Now, fast forward to today. May has been out of town on a trip with her class, and she was going to be gone for a week. Because this is a national event that happens every year and there in the city, everything is very expensive. She has a credit card under her name that is connected to my account, and I said she could use it for meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, but snacks and souvenirs she would have to buy on her own. She called earlier and we were talking while my husband was in the room. She started complaining about how expensive everything was, and she jokingly said she was going to go bankrupt once she returned from her trip. I told her not to worry about it, and if she needed, she could use her credit card for whatever. Then my husband pipes in and says, "Stop guilting your mother to give you money. Whatever you want, you can buy yourself." She was quiet for a moment, before saying that she wasn't asking for anything. And then he repeated, "Don't guilt your mother. How can you be morally okay with that?" She said she wasn't calling to ask for money, that she just wanted to complain and that she was going to hang up. I took her off speaker to tell her it was fine, but she just swore up and down she wasn't trying to guilt me, and that she was just going to pretend that call never happened and that it was fine. And then she hung up. I was so angry. I yelled at him, told him he was being ridiculous and that she was still a child. I left before he could respond. I'm still angry. She apologizes to me every time she buys a meal because she thinks it's too much. I've noticed that she buys her own breakfast and only spends money on lunch and dinner, even though I've said she can do all three. I'm angry and I don't know what to do. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole for yelling at your husband, but you're the a-hole for continuing to be in a relationship with someone who hates your kid. It makes her feel guilty for her existence and the associated costs. You need to make it clear that if he doesn't change his behavior immediately and completely, you'll be out the door. That's something I don't think is truly highlighted. He's literally making her feel guilty for existing in their lives. She's 16. You should be paying for her meals and the things she needs for school and life. He's definitely a, you can stay here and pay rent and utilities at 18 or you can find a new place to live kind of man. And that's just unacceptable. I have a brother who is in his 40s and doesn't pay his own cell phone bill. He's on my parents' plan and it's $10 a month. So I don't know what plan your daughter is on that it's $50. Unless your a-hole husband thinks she has to have her own plan, just so he can then turn around and decide to stop paying for it. Yeah, buying groceries causes me physical pain because my dad acted like the $5 for a middle school field trip was going to put us out on the streets. He'd snarl and pick at us anytime we needed money. I do not speak to my father anymore. Doing nothing is taking a side OP. If you stay, you're showing her who you choose. You're the a-hole for marrying a man that treats your daughter this way. She's 16, still a minor. You are responsible for feeding her and should be paying all of her expenses, within reason, until at least 18. Let her save her money to build a future. If I was her, I would save every penny to get away from that horrid man. Choose your daughter. Everyone sucks here. Someday your daughter, and perhaps your other children too, will ask you why you made them live with a man who treated them like this. Last story. Am I the a-hole for reporting my son's good teacher for taking his confiscated phone home with her where it got damaged? Last week, Friday, my son, 10, got his phone confiscated at school. He was mucking around with it during class, and the school rules are clear about phone usage during class without permission, so I totally understood. The normal protocol is that the phone would go to the office where it would be returned to the student at the end of the day or the next day. His teacher, however, apparently forgot to stop by the office before going home after school, so she accidentally took it home with her, and through some negligence, the phone broke in the hands of her toddler. Admittedly, she was very upfront about it. It even came to our house personally to tell us what happened and apologize, which I respect. She suggested a repayment plan for the phone and offered an old phone of hers for him in the meantime, but it was essentially a brick with a screen. After she left, I sent an email to the school about everything simply because I think it's something the school should also be involved in, since she's a teacher and easily took home a confiscated device, albeit by mistake. Received a response Monday morning apologizing for what happened and promising to address the issue. So, my sister-in-law works at a high school but smokes with the teachers at the junior school, which is where she bumped into this teacher who was angry and said that we were being a-holes reporting it, since she already promised to pay for the phone, offered an alternative and is a good teacher, so we're messing with her career unnecessarily. So yeah, are we the a-holes? Not the a-hole. Taking the phone home accidentally could be understood to a degree. There's zero reasons why it should have been within her toddler's reach. Info. OP, did you actually see the broken phone? Maybe it's just my suspicious little brain, but there was a similar post a while ago where everyone heavily suspected the teacher of stealing the phone and trying to give a crappy phone back as payment. The original phone was not actually broken. The teacher kept it. Although this teacher offering a payment plan suggests they're willing to completely pay for a new phone, not just steal and give a crappy phone back. Yeah, it's busted. Screen severely cracked and that weird ink or dead pixel stuff is blocking 3/4 of the screen. Looking at the damage now though, unless her toddler is the next Hulk, I'm starting to doubt that was the cause since it had a protector in case. Not the a-hole. The teacher did not follow guidelines, albeit your son wasn't wrong. However, phones prices scale, and she had no reason to take it home with her. How her toddler then got a hold of it and broke it is a completely different issue. Teacher is upset she got in trouble for not following the rules, just like your son was upset his phone was taken for not following the rules. Update. My husband got jealous over the girl he led on for years at our wedding. Original post. I, 25 female, got married to my husband, 24 male, we'll call him Jim, a week ago after dating for 2.5 years. Jim has a friend called Misha, 22 female, who was invited to the wedding. He and Misha have known each other since high school and were close friends, and Misha had a very obvious crush on Jim from what he and others who know them have told me. Jim told me this after I met Misha for the first time and confessed that he leaned into her crush and led her on throughout their high school years and for a little while after before we got together because he was struggling with his mental health and he really liked her attention. He seemed genuinely guilty about all of that because he thought Misha was a nice girl and a good friend. And because he showed guilt, I didn't feel the need to bring it up or argue about it despite thinking it was a horrible thing to do. Plus, Misha is a nice girl who has never overstepped boundaries and has been nothing but kind and friendly towards me, and I now consider her a friend too. Misha moved away to the city last year and has done really well for herself and has a long-term boyfriend who none of us have met yet. So, when it came to sending wedding invites, I told her she was welcome to bring him as her +1. The first red flag came when Jim was weirdly resistant to the idea of Misha bringing her boyfriend. But he excused it on being concerned about the number of guests we invited and the matter was dropped. When the wedding day came, Misha showed up in this beautiful dress. Nothing inappropriate for a wedding and with her boyfriend on her arm, who I'll admit is a very handsome guy. Think a Kit Harington type. She's also lost weight and has a haircut that suits her better, and I thought she looked great. We also found out throughout the night that her boyfriend is very successful and earns more than practically anyone else who attended. Throughout the reception, I noticed Jim glaring at Misha and her boyfriend the whole time, and he was really cold and short towards her when she came over to congratulate us and give us a gift. He was also straight up kinda rude to her boyfriend when Misha introduced us to him. When his mom, who's always known and liked Misha, mentioned that she was glad Misha found a great guy and praised her boyfriend for being so nice, Jim snapped that at least she won't be desperate and hung up on me for the rest of her life, which I thought was cruel and uncalled for. But I didn't challenge him because I didn't want to argue at my wedding despite the fact that he frankly sounded bitter. The whole thing has left an awful taste in my mouth, and I can't help but think that Jim got jealous that Misha has found a guy who's honestly quite a catch, who she's clearly very in love with, and is now completely over Jim. Now for the top comments before reading the updates. It's giving bitter. Can't imagine how that must have been for you. Says a lot about his character, to be honest. It felt a lot like watching a kid get upset at another kid for playing with a toy they personally never wanted to play with in the first place, if that makes any sense. I get it. But I mean, apart from this, have you never had an indication of what a crappy guy he is? I mean, character matters, and he lacks a lot of it. Can't imagine it being so unsettling and such a turn-off. He's definitely always been quite insecure, but I thought it was something he was really working on and making progress with. Annulment/divorce is a choice you can't back out of, so take a moment to consider it. That is, unless you have other reservations about him that you haven't shared with us here, because no one here knows your life aside from this post. I think the best next steps would be to sit down and tell him how you feel and how his attitude really dampened the wedding. That he took a day that was meant to be about your combined future and focused in on his past. A past that he apparently didn't care about until someone else showed interest. Hopefully it was a moment of weakness. A moment where he hadn't realized he had fallen into old habits, and he apologizes to you and does what he can to make up for how badly he killed the mood at the wedding. And with a wish and a prayer, maybe then takes the time to call up the girl, who was supposed to be his friend, and apologize to her too. But that's just wishful thinking. Either way, if he doesn't show any remorse or humility for how he acted, then I'd say annulment is back on the menu. I think I would have to take a step back from hubby and see if there were any other red flags I've missed. He was jealous of this woman and her boyfriend on your wedding day. I cannot imagine how much this hurt you. I am so sorry. How he admitted to treating that girl was the red flag. And Opie entirely overlooked it basically. He was okay using someone to meet his own needs and feed his ego for years. How exactly did Opie think that makes for a good husband material? But that's the other problem. Way too young in my opinion to be getting married anyway. Let's not mention the fact that seems Opie is in this exact situation now. Seems like she was a placeholder until girl came back to her senses for Jim. If your husband couldn't enjoy his wedding day, I fear for your future. His only reason to snap is jealousy, but you should be his world. Opie needs to get a divorce now, before things get even more out of hand with more unexpected craziness. Annulment should be considered ASAP. Get this all out on the table, Opie, to see if you still want to be married to him. Now for the mini update. After getting some PMs from people, I decided to go through his phone while he was napping after work. And needless to say, this marriage is over. I'll post a real update when I have sorted everything out. Now for the full update. Hey everyone, I'm posting this here because I said in my last post that I would update when I was able to. Pretty much the day after my original post, I got some PMs from people suggesting that I go through my husband Jim's phone to see if he and Misha were truly just friends before this, and that nothing romantic happened between them that would explain his reaction at the wedding. He always takes a 45-minute nap after work, and so I used that as my opportunity to swipe his phone from where it was charging on his desk so that I could look through it. I've seen him put in his passcode a ton of times, so that wasn't an issue. I didn't find anything in his texts with her, but I know that Jim goes on Instagram a lot, so I checked there too. The immediate red flag was that he'd used an app lock that required a passcode to access Instagram, but the dumbass used the same passcode that he uses to unlock his phone, so I got into that right away. It's his birth year, go figure. And what would you know? I go to his messages with Misha and find messages from him the morning after our wedding, telling her how beautiful she'd looked that night, how much he'd missed her, how he felt that her boyfriend being there spoiled his opportunity to catch up with her and that he was desperate to meet up with her. Misha never replied to these messages, and he sent some more to her later that day. I won't get into what he said because they were very personal insults that were frankly just gross. But just think about the kind of stuff you would read on that nice guy subreddit. Misha left him on read, and when I clicked on her account, it appears that she's blocked him. I scrolled through their messages quite far back, and I believe nothing romantic has happened between them. I wish that was all, but looking into his other conversations on Instagram, I found that he's been messaging other girls on there. They seemed like aspiring Instagram model types from our area. Most of these conversations were just him shooting a shot and getting left on read, but others had evolved into flirting and 2 of them resulted in nexting. And the most embarrassing part of all, the news he was sending to these women weren't even of him. I know what his body looks like, and he doesn't have chiseled abs and isn't that well endowed. I think I must have found a man's profile on some adult website and used those pictures, just cropping the face out. These 2 conversations happened in the past 6 months. I ended up texting his mom and his brother from my phone, asking them to come and pick him up from the apartment, and then I went to wake him up. I told him that I knew about a girl he was messaging on Instagram, that he needed to pack a bag and get the hell out before I started throwing his stuff out on the street and causing a scene. He started crying and begging me not to kick him out, and swore that they were just messages, and that he would never actually cheat on me. But I don't believe him for a second. Then he had the nerve to tell me that he didn't want me to tell anyone else about what he'd done, but I had left the room and started ignoring him by that point. He left with his mom and brother and is staying there from what I know. I've blocked him on everything for the time being until I'm ready to tell him that I'm seeking annulment. Thankfully, from where I'm from, you can get one almost no questions asked, as long as you haven't been married for longer than 30 days and have already looked into the process. I haven't really left my apartment at all this week, and I've been calling in sick to work because I don't feel like I can face people. I'm just so embarrassed that I've wasted over 2 years on this man and that I married him in the first place. I don't feel like I can talk to people about this, so posting here has helped, and I'd like to thank you all for your kind words, advice, and support. I might reach out to Misha when the dust has settled, but I think I'll need to build up some courage for that. How to ruin your life, because you can't hide the fact you are lusting after another woman at your actual wedding. I wonder if he was lusting, or if it was just an ego thing. I've known people in that situation who string someone along who has a crush on them. They like the ego boost. And when that person moves on, it stings them. Ego thing for sure. Had an ex like this myself. And boy are they ugly on the inside. And sometimes on the outside when the rose-colored glasses come off. It's cathartic watching them implode a little when they learn you have self-esteem now. Oh yes, me too. He put me down and was cruel and dismissive for 3 years. But always gave just enough to make sure I was still interested. All because he liked the attention. I was very emotionally messed up and an easy target. Then, he finally introduced me to his best friend, who he also put down a lot. Friend and I got along great. When he noticed we were having a lively conversation without him, he started sitting really close to me and putting his arm around my shoulder, to which I did not respond. Friend and I went out to fancy dinner together 2 nights later and talked up a storm. Horrid ex found out. Within a week I was ghosted without warning or explanation by both of them. I haven't seen either one in a year, and that's what it took to break the chain. Time and distance. Good for Misha for extricating herself from that toxic jerk. The only bright side is, she didn't waste any more of her life on this lying loser, and realized what was up immediately after the wedding. Yes, plus she was nice with Misha at the wedding, and didn't blame others for her guy's horrible behavior. A lot of people would have felt insecure and lashed out at Misha instead of the guy. She was smart enough to put the blame on the person who deserved it, and was able to get away right away instead of wasting years on this guy. So many people try to blame the person their partner cheated with, or in this case, tried to cheat with, and got shut down. Then they stay with a cheater and keep blaming other people as if that will salvage the relationship. Far better to focus your upset feelings on the jackass who caused them and to get them out of your life and move on. Last story. Update. I found out that my husband tried to convince his old girlfriend to run off with him before her wedding. Original post. So that has happened. The best part is, we're on holiday with 3 other couples in a foreign country. My sister sent me money so I could get my own room here. I looked at changing my flight, but it's so expensive, and we aren't scheduled to leave for 4 days yet. Last year, my husband and some of his friends had a lads' weekend in London. In reality, he had gone up to Liverpool because he heard his old girlfriend from university was getting married and went to convince her to run off with him. She sent him on his way. I only found out because 2 of his mates and one of their wives who are on holiday with us talked about it after we'd all been drinking. My husband didn't deny it. He says it was a stupid decision he made on a whim, and besides that, he hasn't seen or talked to her in 12 years, and has never been unfaithful. But he didn't deny that he asked her to run off with him and ask his mates to lie for him. At least the beach here is beautiful, and the resort has alcohol. I'm just wanting a good cry here. I have called my sister, but I don't want to run up my mobile bill. I can't stay with him. Not after that. I'm on here to spill my feelings everywhere. I've already cried on the beach. Now for the top advice before reading the update. How long have you been married? We have been married for 7 years. Oh yeah, I tried to run off with her, but the only reason I'm with you is because she turned me away. But I haven't done anything since then, so it's okay. It hurts now, but in time you'll see it's the best decision you ever made. Be with someone that chooses you always. You're not a consolation prize he gets because the ex didn't want him. And all my friends knew, and I got them to cover for me and then let you holiday with them. So really, it's not that bad, and on par with me forgetting to buy the milk. All in all, we're a great bunch of people. If he hasn't cheated yet, it's only because he hasn't been afforded the opportunity. I'm so sorry this happened to you. The absolute gall he and his friends have is unreal. You are absolutely right in that you can't stay with him. He betrayed your trust and marriage, in probably the worst way imaginable, and just came back as if nothing happened. The man is looking for outs to the marriage himself. You might as well show him the easiest one, the door. But remember to take as much off him on his way out. Record all interactions, start getting bank statements together, get that information about him absconding to Liverpool to run away with an old flame in writing via text messages, etc. Outside of it being good during a divorce settlement, it will generally make it easier for the court to come to a determination that the marriage is irreconcilable. In Wales, divorce is strictly no fault. There are no longer grounds for divorce or the need to prove bad behavior, and whatever the husband or wife did has no bearing on the settlement. I used to work in a law firm as an assistant until I switched jobs this year. Wow, what a crappy husband. An equally crappy friend group. For real. I mean, it sucks being OP right now, but also, imagine being the friends' wives? Knowing your husband was okay with his friend doing that crap would make me seriously question who I married. The wives knew about it when he did, and none of them told me. All 3 couples who knew traveled with us knew, and he has other mates back home. He told them what he was really doing and that the lad's weekend in London was a lie. Not all of them told me after we were drinking, but they all knew. I hope you're okay. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now. Such a terrible thing to do, and for the friends that never told you. Has he even tried to find you to explain? I'm avoiding all of them and told them to leave me alone. If he has tried, he hasn't found me yet. Now for the update. It's not very exciting, but I was getting people asking. Our flights ended up being delayed because of the storm that came to Florida. When we did get to fly home, I wasn't sitting with my husband or any of them. My sister picked me up from the airport and I am staying with her for the time being. My husband has tried to explain, but I don't want to hear it. It's my intention to get a divorce. Here in Wales, divorce is no fault, and anything he did won't have any effect on it. Both of us have jobs. We didn't have kids yet. Our flat isn't owned by either of us. The process has started, but it won't be drawn out. I also had some of the people who knew what he did apologize to me for hiding it, but it feels like too little too late to me. Did you share a room the rest of the trip? What happened? I got my own room in another part of the hotel after this happened. He wanted me to stay in our room, but I just couldn't. Does he know you want to divorce now? Yes, he does. I have started the process and both of us have solicitors now. Best wishes. You deserve not to be a placeholder or fallback plan in your relationship. Sorry your circle of friends with him sucks too. May you move on and find your happiness. Update. Am I the a-hole for getting a job to get out of taking care of my husband's autistic niece? Original post. My husband, 30 male, became the legal guardian to his sister's daughter, 17 female, 2 months ago. She lost her single mom last year. My in-laws took her in, but they were too old. That was when my husband became her legal guardian despite my concerns. He told me that he would take care of her completely. We got married a year ago after 15 years of dating. I had a very successful career in a very physically and mentally demanding field, and I had to travel a lot. We wanted to start a family, and I agreed to be a stay-at-home mom. I quit my job a few months into the marriage when I got pregnant. Sadly, I had a miscarriage. Then his sister died and everything is on hold. In the meantime, I took a part-time job in a related field which allows remote work so that I'm not bored out of my mind. My sister-in-law was a nurse. She quit her job to take care of her daughter full-time. Her daughter has a variety of issues, including nonverbal autism, a series of development disorder like dyslexia, and severe sensory issues. My husband says that he does most of the work, but he doesn't. Since I'm working from home part-time, most of the caretaking falls to me. She gets angry and has meltdowns all the time. She doesn't like the food I make, and most of the time she ends up throwing the food at the floor or at me. I am at my wit's end, and it is just so emotionally exhausting. Around December 15, my husband was working late and asked me to take care of dinner. She's very picky about food. The slightest change in texture or taste from what she's used to can cause a meltdown. She threw the plate at my feet and I ended up bleeding. At that point, I called my husband and asked him to be home ASAP. He said he wouldn't be able to. So I went up to my room and told him I am not dealing with this anymore. I came home hours later and she was still crying. He was absolutely furious at me. He called me heartless and irresponsible. I told him I have had enough of both of their ungrateful behavior and told him that I am going to my mom's and I wouldn't be back until New Year's. He panicked and tried to apologize, but I left. He called me every day asking me to come back. I finally came back, and he told me that my stunt had forced him to all available leaves to stay home with her. He told me that he was glad I was back, but I told him that I contacted my former company and got my old job back, and it starts next Monday. It is in office and requires a lot of travel. He asked me who was supposed to stay at home as she cannot be left alone. He has no more leaves, and full-time caretakers are too expensive. I told him he promised to take care of everything when he became her guardian and that it was his problem. As you can guess, my family supports me, but his family thinks I am being extremely selfish. So I am asking judgment from impartial strangers. Am I the a-hole in this situation? Now for the top comments before reading the update. Not the a-hole. Your husband likes being the hero but doesn't have a clue as to how to do the actual work, so he just left it all to you. You have been sorely taken advantage of, and I don't think you are qualified to handle this level of need. Your niece needs expert help. And by referring to your need for a break as a stunt, it's clear he views you as having had a temper tantrum, and he has graciously allowed you to get over your snit but expects compliance from now on. It has also given you a preview of what parenthood will be. You do the work, he gets to enjoy the hour or two of happy, fed and bathed child that he can play with and hand back. Taking care of a special needs child requires some serious work. Opie's husband just wants the good things about having a child, but hands all of the real work to her. He told her he would be the one to take care of her completely, but flipped out when the struggle begins. Caretaker burnout is very real, and referring to Opie's need for a break as a stunt shows just how little he respects and appreciates her work, as well as his limited understanding of what it takes to care for a special needs child. Opie, you're not heartless or irresponsible. You took care of a child that weren't your responsibility. That alone makes you far better than your hubby. You were literally injured taking care of her, but all he cares about is how you didn't do what he promised to do? Get your job back. He's her legal guardian. He has to and will take care of her. He's being massively ungrateful. I feel bad for your husband's niece. Hopefully she gets the help and care she needs. Info. Are you planning on still being married to him? At the moment, no. I'm just trying to see what happens next. But if he doesn't find a solution that expects me to be a full-time carer, then no, I would walk away. Walk away? He will tell you whatever he needs to tell you to make you stay, like you did the first time. And then you will again find yourself being slowly manipulated into the caretaker role. You already know that. That marriage cannot be salvaged. It won't work if your niece stays. And it won't work again if your niece is placed in a home. This is over. He will resent you, and you have found out you cannot trust him. There is no more basis for a relationship. Yikes. That's true. How sad. 15 years of dating and 1 year married just to be ruined by family rubbish. True. They can't stay together if the disabled kid is there, and he won't forgive her if he has to send a kid to a care facility. Poor Opie. And now for the update. A lot of people were messaging me for an update, so here goes. I wish I could say things got better. My husband took a few days off to interview special needs nannies/caretakers. He ended up finding a good and experienced person to take on the job. He hired her for 9 to 6 during weekdays. One day, she ended up saying she could not make it for a couple of days due to an emergency. My husband had a meeting he couldn't miss and asked me to look after his niece for the day. I refused, and he took my car keys while I was getting ready and left before I noticed so that I could not go to work. I grew up with a narcissistic, gaslighting father who did stuff like this all the time. So I told him to come back in 1 hour or I will call CPS, and once they get there, I will call a cab and get to work. He ended up driving back, and this turned into a big fight, and I told him that if he does it again, I will walk out and never look back. He apologized and said that he was just desperate. The worst happened 2 weeks ago. I needed to travel for a couple of weeks for work and I could not find my passport. I'm a very organized person and I knew that I did not misplace it. I ended up calling the non-emergency helpline. They ransacked the house and found the passports hidden in his gym bag. It is a crime to steal passports, and they asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said no. Another fight. He told me that he needed me at home that weekend due to a social welfare visit, and he knew that I would not stay even if he had asked me. I finally kicked them both out of my house, and I told him I would call the police if he came near me again. My house is a premarital asset, thank God for that. Then told him that I would be filing for divorce. The welfare visit turned into a mess, as neither of them were living there when the worker showed up, and a social worker also knew about the recent call to the non-emergency helpline. So all in all, she was not impressed with our BS. He came by 2 days ago and told me that he ended up moving in with his parents. They own and live in a small 2-bedroom apartment. That doesn't qualify according to welfare norms. So he ended up asking me for another chance. He asked if I would consider letting him and Denise stay until they figure it out, or she would have to go to state's care. He told me that there is no way he can afford rent and a carer, and begged me. I told him that I could never forgive what he did. He knew my past with my father, and he still went ahead and did it. He suggested they could move in and we can work on this at a couples counseling. I told him that I could never trust him again, and that it was over. He asked me if he could get his parents to take in Denise, or even relinquished her care to the state, so I would give him another chance. I think months of worth of anger burst that day. I told him that even though it may appear as if the problem between us is Denise, it was actually him. He didn't ask me before taking her in. He did nothing to help. He waved my concerns away whenever I felt burnt out. He took on a responsibility without consulting me and dumped everything on me. He chose to take my keys. He chose to hide my passport. I told him things may have been different. Him, Denise, and I may have adapted and become a family if he hadn't made a wrong choice at my expense, at every turn. I told him to get out of my house, that it was over and I never want to see any of them ever again. I still don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong. I know people wanted some sort of happy ending, but it is what it is. I still have not started the divorce proceedings yet, but I will soon. For now, I am taking a break as it had been a very emotional and draining couple of weeks. It's easy to be the selfless hero caring for the poor orphan child when you don't have to actually do a single damn thing. I also noticed that not a single one of his relatives who are criticizing her for being selfish apparently offered to lift a finger until she finally kicked him out. Honestly, it's probably their self-preservation instinct kicking in. If they can guilt someone else into taking care of Denise, they don't have to. Most people cannot take care of a person like this in the US, whether they want to or not. It basically precludes working, and you kind of have to work. I actually consider this a very happy ending for Opie. Divorce is not easy, but she absolutely made a right decision. I read the original post and I'm glad to see the update. That husband is a piece of work. It's not happy at all for Denise, but that's not Opie's fault. I hope Denise receives the support she deserves. To be honest, I'm glad it blew up in his face. Totally deserved. Hope he enjoys the fruits of his non-labor and poor, harmful decision-making. She reverse Uno the heck out of him, and I'm here for it. One of the major lessons from this mess is make a plan for your death. Opie's sister-in-law should have had a plan in place. I know it's a terrible thing to think about it, but look what happens when you don't. I have 2 disabled kids, and we have a life plan for them that includes custody and financials. There are pro bono lawyers who will work with families. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my son's father never mind and that he isn't meeting his kid? My son is 12 and his father has never met him. We had gone to court when my son was like 1. And he at that point said he wasn't ready to be a father and ultimately wanted nothing to do with our child. I was awarded visitation at my own discretion and child support. Well, last year he had reached out completely random on Facebook and said he was ready to meet our kid and said that he turned his life around and regrets every single day of not being here. At this point, he spoke to our son, but in the end my son decided he wasn't ready to meet him yet. Not a big deal really. I mean, his father was angry and tried blaming me at first, but later dropped it and we hadn't heard from him since. Well, he just reached out again about a week and a half ago, and at this point my son was ready to meet him. We made a plan and everything was great. He was being super attentive and checking in every single day. He appeared to be really involved, and everything was truly great. However, he calls me last night, and I don't know if he was drinking or what was up with his sudden attitude, but he was being nasty and telling me, "I will take the boy from you if you do anything that I don't agree with." He was accusing me of spending the child support money on myself despite me giving him no reason to think this. I told him to stop speaking to me like that, and he said it a few more times before I finally snapped and said, "You know what? Never mind. I'm not bringing my son to meet you when you were telling me you were taking him from me." "You're not meeting him," and hung up. I didn't realize my son heard the whole thing. He was standing on the other side of the door and I was unaware. He is obviously on my side but definitely a bit bummed, and just keeps saying he can't believe his dad had the audacity to treat me like that, and kept saying, "Mom, I want you to know that I would always choose you even if he brought you to court." And it was incredibly sad. I reached out to a friend today because this is seriously mentally destroying me, because I know deep down my son still wants to meet him. And my friend basically told me that I was an a-hole and that I had no right to keep my kid from him. Even went on to say, "So what if it takes him? The cops would find him and charge him with kidnapping, and then your son would know what he's dealing with. But until then, stop depriving your son. Am I the a-hole?" Now for the top comments. What is wrong with your friend? This man is clearly unstable and just made a credible threat to kidnap your child. The cops would find him and charge him with kidnapping. Like, has your friend met any police? It could take days, even weeks to find him. What if he was hiding? What if he left town? Your friend is saying it's okay to gamble your son's safety, and if he gets abducted, it'll be fine. Who cares about the mental harm that'll inflict on him or the physical harm an unstable man could do to him? Not the whole times infinity. Your friend needs to stop thinking of human lives like objects. Right? Like, what does it matter if your child gets kidnapped? Also, some kidnapped kids are never recovered. Some are unalived. Seriously, ditch the friend and keep doing what you're doing. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Your friend is an idiot who doesn't know what she's talking about. My cousins got kidnapped by their father, and he took them out of the country until he got sick of them. The police did absolutely nothing. You did the right thing, and you should probably dump that friend. The same thing happened to my cousins. It took my aunt 2 years and a series of very expensive lawyers to get them back. Yep, had a friend who had his wife served with divorce papers because he was extremely unhappy in the marriage. Counseling wasn't helping and he didn't want to be a cheater. Within 6 hours of her being served, she and his child went missing. The police said it was a civil matter. She went to a neighboring state and took our state 2 years to find her. During that time, his son forgot him and another man was daddy. He ended up giving us parental rights because he talked to a child psychologist who said it could be traumatizing for the child to be forced on a stranger, even if he is the father. Last story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for refusing to answer my sister's video call so she can see her baby?" Context. My sister had a planned pregnancy that involves having the baby daddy not being around and is determined to be an independent mom. She gave birth, had to give up her lease and move in with us at a different state. Not a short amount of time after, she managed to get her dream job, knowing that she still has her 6-month-old baby to take care of. This job was not a limited time position and is always hiring in masses every few months or so. She took the job, had to relocate to another state and left us with her baby. I quit my work before she came, so she expected me to take care of her baby. She calls every day to see her baby, and at first that's not an issue to me. But at some point, it just became very depressing for me that this past few months, all I have been doing is taking care of her baby while her IG stories are just her having fun on her job and partying at clubs on her day offs. She does come home once a while when she feels like it to see her baby. Mind you, with her line of work, she's able to fly freely to other states without any expense on her behalf. Recently, I expressed what I felt about watching her baby and she called me rude and selfish, and that it was my fault for not having a job. And in her own words, "You're family, you're supposed to help me out." Mind you, I did have some job offers, but could not take them due to the fact that the hours I have to work is the hours that I have to watch the baby. I can't just leave the baby unattended. She then called us, her family, screwed up family, because I did not answer her calls. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Call CPS and see about getting actual guardianship of this baby so that way you can make decisions and possibly apply for assistance with childcare. Like child support, you can force her to pay for a nanny or daycare. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole, and you should involve the authorities. Basically, she has abandoned her baby. It doesn't matter if you are family. Also, it might cause you trouble legally. Are you this baby's guardian? What rights do you have or does she have? It's really complicated and varies by state, so legal advice is essential. Some places, an occasional phone call may count as contact. Other than whatever emotional supports we can give OP, this is way beyond forum's pay grade. OP, please take care of yourself and please seek legal advice on your options and how to move forward. If you haven't already started keeping a journal of visits, contact, financial support, and baby-related costs you are paying, begin immediately. Wow, just occurred to me that you need to get legal advice ASAP about denying contact, Zoom, phone calls, etc. I don't mean to suggest it could be a crime, but you want to make certain you're in the clear if you deny contact. Update. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband that if he doesn't like the way I parent his kid, he should give her to her alcoholic mother? Original post. I'm not someone who has ever wanted kids to start with. I knew I was unable to have children from a very young age due to a medical condition, and made peace with this long ago, and it wasn't difficult for me too. I have been married to my husband for 3 years now, and absolutely adore his daughter. She's literal a ray of sunshine joy. And he has been honest with me from day one that his daughter will always be his first priority, something that I actually admired about him. I also understood that he will never be able to leave her with her mother because she has a drinking problem that can lead to violence. However, recently he started being very judgmental of everything me and his daughter do together. His daughter is now 7 years old and a few months ago fell during practice and fractured her arm. He was very worried about her, and I was too, but he has always been very protective of her. When I told him that he should relax, she'll be all right and that he can't control every aspect of her life as a way to comfort him, he told me that he'll never be someone like my father, something that really hurt me, but I let it slide. After this incident, he started throwing comments here and there about how I'm being careless with her, or how I'm not fit to be around her, or how I sometimes act so childish with her. A few days ago, I was going to pick her up from school, but I was 15 minutes late due to a hold-up at work while he was out on a business trip. I felt that she was upset about waiting this long because she never had to wait this long before, but she didn't complain. I just felt it. She was not as upbeat as she usually was, so I decided to cancel my plans for the weekend and spend some time with her, with a promise that all studies will be done on Sunday, which almost always was the usual case. We had a what she called girls only day till dad comes home. Went shopping, ate out, had a Disney marathon, and spent some time by the backyard pool. That was over the course of 2 days till my husband came back home. I told him what we did over the few days he was away, which I have of course mentioned over the phone when we talked, or his daughter mentioned when he called her. Though his reaction was not what I expected one bit. His first words to me was, "Do you think you can be a proper mother figure for once in your life?" A sentence that till now still bothers me and echoes in my head. We had a big argument, which ended with me saying that if he doesn't see me as a proper mother figure to his daughter, he should send her to live with her real mother. I still feel bad about saying this, and I know that it will upset me to no end if he actually separated her from me, because I have honestly grown very attached to her. Though still, I do not know if there is something I am not seeing, or if there is something I fail to understand. Maybe I do not have the instinct to mother a child, or I am not seeing it as big of a responsibility as it should be. I just do not understand. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. What exactly does he expect you to do? Bark orders at her and then ignore her half the day? You're interacting with her. You two are close. You do fun things with her. And he's acting like you're not doing it right? Tell him to shut the heck up and kick rocks if he doesn't like how you interact with your stepdaughter. There are 2 comments he made that would have me having a talk with him. Now, he said she wasn't fit to be a parent. And then when are you going to start being a proper mother figure for once in your life, or something close to that? Those are some serious, almost accusation-like comments. He's insinuating something. You would think he'd be overjoyed that his new wife accepts and loves his daughter and spends quality time with her. Not the a-hole. I think couples counseling would help, as blended family can be complicated with lots of different feelings that can be hard to sort through. My gut feeling is that he's somehow jealous of your close relationship with her. Maybe he always had a distant relationship with his own parents and feels threatened by your close bond with his daughter, as it's not how he's been raised. As always, communication is going to be needed to fix this. We both did not have the best relationships with our parents, which led to not having a parental figure to look up to. He was too attached to his father, but his father was always away, while his mother was always absent to their emotional needs, or that's what I understood from how he used to describe her to me. For me, my father was more of the parent to spoil so you love him, even if it's at the expense of your own good. Eventually he left when I was in my late teens and rarely called every now and then because he cares.
All this led me to be really hateful towards my dad and close to my mother, even struggling financially for a while because he was really well off and refused to send me any money at a time. So maybe he's scared that he'll repeat the circle or something. It's really exhausting to try and figure him out at this moment when all he seems to do is just criticize everything I do. He's already perpetuating the cycle. I would have done anything for a stepmom like you. My stepmother was too young to have a 1-year-old daughter, so she followed my narc father's lead a lot. It was super messed up. Now for the update. First of all, thanks for everyone who commented and tried to help me with any insight about this. I really appreciate it. This turned to be more of a rant than expected, so sorry in advance. So the issue with his daughter has actually not been about the way I am with her, but a totally different thing. In short, he is not cheating on me, but he thinks I might have cheated on him. There was someone in his ears, and it's his mother. Apparently, mother-in-law didn't like me from day one, and I was stupidly oblivious to how deep it ran. Yes, a part of me did not allow myself to be fully relaxed around her, and I was kind of on guard because she was excessively nice at times, but I never imagined her dislike ran this deep. It was normal for her to call me names behind my back, say I'm not on their level, tell my husband that I'm using him for his money. Even though till his latest promotion, I was making more than him, and he always joked to mention in front of his family that I was the breadwinner. Now it makes sense why. Also, I was told that whenever my husband stood up for me, her response was, "It's not like she'll be the mother of my grandchild one day." It kind of makes sense now why she had a whole hissy fit when I miscarried the first year of my marriage, as I never went into details about my medical condition with her. I just mentioned I couldn't have a child on my own. Another thing was last year's Mother's Day. My stepdaughter asked her grandma if she can get a gift to Mom. She refers to me by my first name, and never have I heard her call me Mom. Her grandmother went on to explain that she should never call me Mom, because I'm not her actual mother. I'm just Mila. This last thing specifically I fully believe, because I remember it being around a time that my husband asked me, how would I feel if his daughter referred to me as Mom? Her latest scenario is telling everyone that it's suspicious, how sometimes I ask her to babysit my stepdaughter for a bit after school, even though I'm working from home, despite the fact that I stole her time with her grandchild. Yes, there was a couple of months I was so busy with a project that even watching over her while I worked from home was not even an option. I can only imagine, how did she twist this? I knew all of this from his brother's wife when she called me about a few hours ago because she knew I left home and I'm staying with my mom for a while. In her opinion, I should not give mother-in-law the satisfaction of sabotaging my marriage. I left home after we tried to have a decent conversation about what he viewed was problematic of last weekend. The conversation started great, but ended horribly with him asking if I want a divorce, because I'm not satisfied or happy with marrying him. After all of this and as of now, I'm starting to think if it is all worth it. To be honest, if I knew from day one that mother-in-law talked about me like this, I wouldn't have gone through with a marriage or even a relationship to start with. I feel like I was lied to in a way. I also do not understand why did my husband not talk to me about any of this. If it's his way of keeping peace between me and his mother, then it's not appreciated. I'm almost tempted to just call him and tell him that it's either he cuts his mother off from our marriage, or at the very least expect me to not have any relationship with her, or everyone should go on their separate way. My mind is currently working on overdrive, and I probably won't be able to even talk to him and come up with some sort of solution till my feelings are not clouding my thought pattern. You never mentioned what mother-in-law said to make him allegedly believe you had cheated. Did he accuse you of that? It's never clarified. Honestly, it seems like his excuse for his treatment of you is some made-up BS about mother-in-law, as if he's not responsible for believing her lies and not talking to you about any of it. Asking, do you want to divorce me, is honestly a pretty big red flag. It's like him saying, I'm pretty much done, but I want to make you be the one to say it's over. What I know about what his mother is saying is all from his brother's wife. So she told me what she knew, because apparently his mother has done something similar at the beginning of her marriage too. So from what she knows and I understood is that, mother-in-law always threw around how I'm probably unfaithful, because I get bored fast and have no discipline. I do admit that I never held a job for more than a couple of years because I get bored and shifted careers a lot. But that's my career, and I won't have anyone who knows nothing about my work judge that. As for the working from home, I'm working in an advertising agency and I mostly am responsible for the part of branding for startups. So having a one-on-one meeting with a client at my home office is suspicious for her, specifically if I'm sending the little girl away to her. My husband never straight up accused me of cheating, but our last conversation he asked questions like, "Why are you always sending my little girl to my mom all of a sudden if you are the one that offered she can stay with you? What changed? Or what's up with a sudden change of clothing style? Or since when do you get hold-ups at work?" Though recently started wanting to know in specific who is the client that I was with, something I thought was fine because the house is also his private space too. By specific, I mean like name and how did it go and such. If all is true, it does hurt that he would believe his mother's lies and made up stories than just talk. I'd rather be hurt that he tells me what his mother thinks of me than have him try to throw mean comments about something irrelevant to his actual worries in an attempt to escape having a conversation about the real issue. You should post this as an edit. Lots of good background info. Legit question. Why are you meeting clients at home instead of grabbing your laptop and heading to Starbucks or the office or something? That could be potentially dangerous, and I personally would 1000% not be happy about that. Unless you could convince me that you couldn't fit what you need for a meeting in a bag, and you owned and were trained in tactical self-defense shooting, or at least a purple or brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Honestly, I haven't thought about it being dangerous, as the first initial meeting with a client is usually done in office by another department, so in my head it sounded safe. Though my only problem was that I didn't like someone I don't know to walk through the interior of my house till we reached my office. So I had a door leading from the side of the backyard straight to my office. It may have been careless of me now that I think about it, that I may have failed to see the potential danger, but I didn't have my husband or anyone really say anything about it. The way I looked at it was that it's more convenient for me as the office is an hour's drive. I also do not like working in a cafe or something, so the option didn't cross my mind. To be honest, I would absolutely ask that. Why isn't he telling you? Why is he lying by omission? Does he actually think you're cheating? Does he want you to be a mom figure in his kid's life? If the answers are no, then does he want a divorce? Because he can't have it both ways. He can't let his mom talk trash and then hide it and get mad at you for being there for his kid. Sounds like he's projecting and he's the one who's not happy here. Which is fine, but like he needs to be a big boy and own that if that's the case. What a hot mess. His own mother is doing this. Why are some mothers like this? It's sick. He's married to his mama, and this is what these boys do in those situations. They will drift from woman to woman and never figure out that they and their lack of backbone are the actual issue. Because mommy spends her life in a "my son is perfect" circle jerk, and this satiates his frail ego. Last story. Am I the a-hole for pointing out to my wife, 30 female, that she never had a job before? So I, 35 male, and my wife, 30 female, got married about 6 months ago. We were just hanging out with a few friends today, most are newly married couples too. I was talking with them about how finance has been a bit tight lately since I'm the sole earner in our family. Living cost has been more than doubled since I was single, while there's no additional income. We also recently put down our down payment to our house, so expenses are higher than ever. Anyways, we were trying to cut down some other expenses. We recently calculated our grocery spending average, which comes to about $1,000 a month. So I was trying to get advice from my friends on how to cut it back. We got a few different feedback, from buy this item at a different store to it's okay to spend more on groceries, but try to cut back on other expenses. My wife, whose cooking is her hobby and pretty much what she's doing all day, was very supportive with the idea of keeping or increasing the current grocery budget, which I think is already too high for just 2 people. I pointed out to her how it may not be feasible for us to keep the current spending, let alone increase it. I emphasized to her that working a full-time job to earn money for the family is not easy. She's 30 years old, but she never had any job experience. She has lived her entire life under her parents' roof and had all her expenses managed by her parents until we got married 6 months ago. I told her again that now we are married, things will have to change for both of us. She got visibly quiet after I said this, and my friends quickly tried to change the conversation topic. At that point, I realized I might had hit a nerve with my words, even if technically I'm not saying anything wrong. Am I the a-hole for saying this? Edit. I didn't expect this post to receive this many comments. Whether you're saying not the a-hole or you're the a-hole, I respect all your feedback and opinion. Keep them coming. For everyone asking on more clarification, we do live in a very high cost of living area, Peninsula Bay area, so everything is very expensive here. $1,000 per month grocery spending is just for groceries, but that's not all of our food spending. We cook for 5 to 6 days of meal per week and eat out 2 to 4 times a week. Our restaurant spending comes to an additional $400 to $500 per month. Why my wife never had a job before, as some of you have guessed, is because of the family upbringing. Their family values are basically men work and earn money, while women stay at home, do household chores, and raise children. My wife's sisters, mother, and her closest female cousins, as far as I know, none of them ever had a real job before. Isn't that a conversation you should have had 6 months ago before you got married? Makes me wonder what else you did not discuss. I agree with you that a stay-at-home is a huge financial burden, but not like she quit her job. And maybe have a conversation like that in private, not in front of an audience. Yeah, this would have been awful for everyone involved. It's wild that you would have this conversation with your friends and not before you were married. It's also wild that you're spending $1,000 a month on groceries for 2 people. You married a princess. Yeah, I don't think Opie realizes it either. She's a queen now, and he is asking her to work. I doubt her mother worked, and I doubt her father asked her to work. And if they ever get divorced, even without kids, he will be 100% supporting her through alimony payments forever, unless she somehow gets married again, which most will just live with somebody but not get married just to not give up alimony, unless she catches a bigger fish somehow. But guaranteed big alimony since you married her never having a job or any life skills, and she has continued to not have any job. She would be entitled to maintaining her same lifestyle in most cases after a divorce because you chose to catch a trophy wife, and she can be accepted to stay that way. Very stupid. Should have at least made her get a basic job before the wedding, so you could at least have the argument that she had a job before, so a judge would expect her to still have a job factored into the alimony calculations, versus not having one.